The sky above Zithra burned a deep crimson, casting long shadows across the city. Once gleaming towers of crystal and metal now cracked and smoked under the assault. Explosions rocked the streets, sending debris flying like deadly rain. Princess Lyria ran as fast as her legs could carry her, silver hair whipping behind her, heart pounding like a war drum. The city she had known her entire life was collapsing. The walls she had trusted to protect her were gone. The people she loved, guards, friends, citizens, were falling one by one. And all around her, chaos reigned. Her mother, Queen Arivara, had trained her in survival and strategy, but nothing could have prepared her for this. Lyria's claws scraped across broken metal and shattered glass as she ducked behind a crumbling wall. The enemy soldiers moved with terrifying precision, their weapons firing in unison, leaving trails of fire that made the air taste like ash. Lyria swallowed hard, trying to control the rising panic in her chest. Fear was sharp, stabbing, and she felt it clawing at her throat. She had never been this alone. Then she saw him. A human, standing in the middle of the street, unarmed but unafraid. His armor was battered, scarred from previous battles, yet he radiated calm determination. Lyria froze. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile, unfit for war, but here he was, moving like a storm, taking down enemies with speed and precision she had never imagined. Each movement was measured, deadly yet protective, as if every strike was not just for survival but to guard someone fragile, someone like her. Her first thought was disbelief. A human, fighting like this, alone? Her instincts screamed at her to run, to hide, but something in him held her gaze. His eyes, dark, steady, and unwavering, met hers for a brief moment. It was like he could see through the fear, through the chaos, and straight into the heart of her despair. And in that brief connection, something shifted. A tiny spark of hope ignited inside her chest, fragile but real. An enemy soldier lunged at her from the side. Lyria screamed and spun to run, but the human was already there. He intercepted the attack, moving with a strength and speed that left her breathless. He didn't hesitate, didn't falter. In seconds, he neutralized the threat and extended a hand toward her. "Come with me if you want to live," he said. His voice was calm, deep, and reassuring, unlike anything she had heard in the chaos. Lyria hesitated. Every story she had been told about humans painted them as selfish, reckless, and weak. Yet here he was, offering her safety, risking his life without a second thought. She wanted to trust him, but centuries of fear and prejudice held her back. And then another explosion shook the street, throwing her to the ground. Dust and smoke filled her lungs. The enemy soldiers advanced again, faster this time, relentless in their pursuit. Lyria's heart froze. There was no time to think. Survival demanded action. With a trembling hand, she grasped his outstretched one. The moment her fingers closed around his, a strange warmth coursed through her. It was more than reassurance. It was courage, a promise that she was not alone, and just like that she allowed herself to follow him. The human guided her through the burning streets, leaping over rubble and dodging blasts. Each step was dangerous, but he never faltered. Each obstacle he overcame was a lesson in bravery. Lyria felt a mixture of awe, gratitude, and disbelief. She had grown up learning that humans were weak, yet here was one who seemed unstoppable, whose courage outshone any alien warrior she had known. As they ran, Lyria began to notice the details, the way he moved with purpose, how he calculated risks and protected her without hesitation, how he faced death without fear. Every second she spent with him shattered her preconceptions. Every rescue, every decision was a message. Humans were not weak. Humans were extraordinary, capable of courage that could rival even the mightiest alien warriors. And as the flames of the city raged behind them, Lyria felt something she hadn't felt in her entire life. Hope. For the first time since the attack began, she believed she might survive. And somehow she knew it was because of him, the human who had appeared out of nowhere and chosen to fight, to protect, to save her when no one else could. Even amidst the chaos, Lyria whispered to herself, maybe humans are more than we ever imagined. Smoke still hung thick over the city as Lyria and the human, Ethan as he had told her his name, moved through the ruined streets. Every corner held danger. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Lyria's heart raced, but this time it was not just fear. There was a growing sense of trust, fragile yet real. She followed him closely, noticing how he moved with calm focus, scanning their surroundings with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Stay low, Ethan whispered, pointing toward a narrow alley. His voice was steady, and yet there was warmth in it. A quiet reassurance that made her feel safe in a world that had become death itself. Lyria swallowed her fear, doing as he said. The human's movements were unlike anything she had ever seen, fluid, precise, powerful. Even the enemy soldiers seemed slower in comparison, clumsy and predictable against him. They came across a group of enemy scouts blocking their path. Lyria froze, certain they would be captured or worse. But Ethan stepped forward, weapon in hand. In moments he had neutralized them without a sound, using swift strikes and clever maneuvers. Lyria could only watch, amazed as he moved with grace and strength. She had grown up seeing warriors who relied on strength and numbers, but Ethan relied on skill, courage, and intelligence. She realized then that humans were underestimated for a reason. They did not rely solely on power. They adapted, they thought, and they acted with heart. Once the scouts were gone, Ethan extended his hand again. "This way," he said simply. Lyria hesitated, her instincts still wary. But the fear of staying alone in the ruins was stronger than her hesitation. She reached for his hand, and again, the warmth of his grip spread through her, grounding her, giving her courage she did not know she possessed. As they ran, Lyria noticed small things about him that no one would expect. He moved silently over debris, scanned their path ahead, and even offered her a drink from his water ration, insisting she hydrate. "You need strength," he said, smiling briefly. Lyria blinked, surprised. Humans were not supposed to care for others in this way. But here he was, thinking of her, protecting her, putting himself at risk without hesitation. Hours passed as they navigated through the crumbling city. The distant sound of explosions was constant, yet Lyria began to feel something strange. Hope. Ethan's presence made her believe that survival was possible. She realized she was no longer thinking about the destruction around her. She was thinking about how extraordinary this human was. She had read stories of bravery, of legendary warriors, yet nothing compared to what she was witnessing. Finally, they reached a collapsed bridge leading out of the city. Smoke and fire blocked the direct path, but Ethan scanned the rubble carefully. "I can get us across," he said. With her help, he shifted debris, tested the stability of the stones, and found a path. Step by step they moved across the broken bridge, each movement tense and careful. Lyria's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from admiration. Every step Ethan took was a promise. He would not let her fall. When they reached the other side, safe for the moment, Lyria leaned against a wall, gasping for breath. Ethan stood beside her, calm and steady. She looked at him, her eyes wide with disbelief and gratitude. Why are you helping me?" she asked, voice trembling. He shrugged lightly, his gaze soft but unwavering. "Because it's the right thing to do," he said simply. There was no arrogance in his words, no pride, just honesty. Lyria had never heard such sincerity before, and it shook something inside her. A human, someone she had been taught to fear and underestimate, had risked everything for her. And he did not ask for anything in return. For the first time since the attack began, Lyria felt a flicker of something she hadn't dared to feel. Trust. She realized that courage was not defined by size, by strength, or by species. It was defined by heart, and this human had the heart of a hero. As the sun began to set behind the burning city, painting the sky in blood red and gold, Lyria followed Ethan through the quiet outskirts. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy, but with him beside her, she dared to believe that they could survive, that she could live, and perhaps even see her home again. And for the first time in days, Lyria allowed herself to hope. The ruins of Zithera stretched endlessly before Lyria and Ethan as they moved cautiously through the outskirts of the city. Fires burned in the distance, casting an eerie orange glow over the twisted metal and shattered streets. Lyria's lungs ached from the smoke and her legs trembled from exhaustion. But Ethan never slowed. He moved with a steady rhythm, alert to every sound, every shadow. Somehow his calm gave her strength. Somehow, with him beside her, she felt she could face anything. As they walked, Ethan glanced at her. "Can you tell me what happened here?" he asked quietly. There was no judgment in his voice, only curiosity and care. Lyria hesitated. She had spent hours running, trying not to think, trying to survive. But something about his presence made her want to speak. She told him about the attack, about the enemy fleets, about the guards who had fallen, and about her mother, Queen Arivara, waiting in the palace. Ethan listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When she finished, he said nothing for a moment. Then he said simply, "We'll get you back. I promise." His words were not boastful. They were firm and sincere. Lyria's chest tightened. Humans were supposed to be weak, unpredictable, selfish. But this human had shown bravery, skill, and compassion that no alien soldier had matched. The journey was treacherous. They had to avoid patrols, navigate collapsed bridges, and cross rivers filled with burning debris. Each obstacle tested Lyria's fear and her endurance, but Ethan guided her with patience. When she stumbled, he caught her. When the ground was unstable, he found a safe path. Every small act reminded her that courage was not measured by size or appearance. It was measured by the willingness to act, to protect, to care for others even when danger surrounded you. Hours turned into a long, grueling night. The sounds of distant battles and explosions echoed through the darkness. Lyria's fear returned in waves, but Ethan's presence anchored her. He shared small pieces of his rations, encouraged her to rest when she could, and silently scanned the shadows for threats. She noticed how he carried himself, not with arrogance, not with pride, but with focus and responsibility. Every human skill she had doubted was displayed before her in perfection. At one point, they came across a collapsed tunnel that blocked their path. Lyria felt panic rise. "We'll have to go back," she whispered, despair creeping in. But Ethan did not hesitate. He examined the rubble, tested each stone, and carefully moved the larger debris aside. "We can do this," he said, and step by step he cleared a safe path, proving that no obstacle was insurmountable when someone refused to give up. Lyria watched him in awe. She had grown up in a world where power, size, and strength determined survival, yet this human, smaller and seemingly fragile compared to alien warriors, moved with a skill and intelligence that surpassed them all. And it wasn't just skill, there was a heart in his actions, a desire to protect, to save, to do what was right even at risk to himself. Lyria realized that bravery did not belong to one species. Humans could be heroes, perhaps even more extraordinary than anyone had imagined. As dawn broke, the sky painted in pale gold, they reached the edge of the forest outside the city. Lyria paused to catch her breath and looked at Ethan. He was tired, dirt-streaked and battered, yet his gaze was steady, unwavering. For a brief moment she wanted to reach out, to tell him what she felt, but words failed her. Instead, she simply nodded, grateful beyond what words could convey. For the first time since the attack began, she allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for something greater. She realized that this human, with his courage, his compassion, and his unwavering determination, had changed her world, and perhaps in some small way he had changed her too. The journey was far from over. The palace, her mother, and her people were still ahead, surrounded by danger. But with Ethan beside her, Lyria no longer felt like a helpless princess running from death. She felt like someone who could fight, someone who could survive, someone who might even see her home again. And for the first time in days, she believed they would make it. The forest outside the city was quiet, but Lyria knew better than to trust silence. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every rustle of leaves could signal an ambush. She walked close to Ethan, whose calm presence had become her anchor in the storm of chaos. His eyes scanned every movement, every sound, alert to danger even when nothing seemed to be there. Lyria felt safe with him, but she also knew the real danger had not yet passed. Suddenly, the sharp sound of snapping branches echoed through the trees. Lyria froze. Ethan's body tensed, muscles coiled like a predator ready to strike. "Stay behind me," he whispered, his voice steady and low. Lyria obeyed instantly, heart pounding in her chest. She had come to trust him completely, but fear still clawed at her, sharp and unrelenting. From the shadows, a squad of enemy soldiers emerged, their weapons raised and eyes gleaming with intent. They had cornered them. Lyria's breath caught. She wanted to run, but she had nowhere to go. The forest offered no cover against so many attackers. She glanced at Ethan. He stood calmly, one step in front of her, as if he were a wall she could hide behind. His gaze never wavered. The enemy advanced. Lyria could hear the hiss of energy weapons and the low growl of their engines. But Ethan moved with precision, striking before the soldiers could fully react. Each motion was calculated, every movement purposeful. He was faster than they expected, stronger than they anticipated. Lyria watched, heart pounding. As he disarmed one, knocked another off balance, and use the environment to his advantage, turning fallen trees and rocks into shields and weapons. Fear surged through Lyria, but it was mixed with awe. She had grown up believing her people were the strongest, that humans were fragile and weak, and yet here was a human, one man, facing dozens of enemy soldiers with nothing but courage, skill, and determination. Her heart swelled with admiration. Perhaps this was what it meant to be truly brave. Not the size of your body, but the size of your heart. One soldier lunged toward Lyria from behind, and she froze, certain this was the end. But Ethan reacted instantly. He twisted, knocked the attacker aside, and pulled Lyria behind him. "Are you hurt?" he asked, voice calm despite the chaos. She shook her head, too stunned to speak. Her fear remained, but it was tempered by something new: trust. She knew that as long as he was there, he would protect her. The fight continued, tense and brutal, but slowly, Ethan gained the upper hand. His strategy was clear. He did not simply attack. He controlled the battlefield, guiding Lyria through each step, keeping her safe even while he fought. Lyria's fear turned into exhilaration. She realized that courage was infectious. Watching Ethan fight inspired something deep within her, a desire to survive, to keep moving, to never give up. Finally, after what felt like hours, the enemy was driven back. The forest fell silent again, broken only by the sound of Lyria's shaky breaths. Ethan turned to her, his expression calm but tired. "We need to keep moving," he said. She nodded, grateful beyond words. Every step forward with him made her feel stronger, braver, more alive. As they continued their journey, Lyria realized something remarkable. Humans were not weak. They were capable of heroism, of courage, and of actions that could change the fate of worlds. Ethan had proven it with every move, every decision, every heartbeat spent protecting her. And in that moment, she understood that her life, and perhaps the future of her people, depended not on her fears, but on the bravery and heart of one extraordinary human. The forest stretched ahead, dark and uncertain, but Lyria no longer felt hopeless. With Ethan beside her, she knew they could face whatever came next. The enemy had tested them, and they had survived. And she understood now, more clearly than ever, that courage and heart mattered more than strength alone. And so hand in hand they pressed onward, ready to face the dangers ahead, bound by trust, hope, and the quiet promise of survival. The forest finally began to thin, revealing the outskirts of the city. Smoke still rose in thick columns, but there was a strange quiet here, broken only by the distant echoes of battle. Lyria's legs were sore, her body aching from hours of running and fighting, yet she felt a glimmer of hope. Hope that she might survive. Hope that she might see her mother again. And through it all, Ethan walked beside her, steady and unwavering, a pillar in the chaos. "This way," he said softly, leading her along a narrow path that wound through broken streets and toppled towers. His eyes scanned the horizon, alert for any sign of danger. Lyria followed, her trust in him absolute. Every time she faltered, he was there, steadying her, guiding her, reminding her that she was not alone. She realized, with a mixture of awe and gratitude, that he was not just protecting her body, he was protecting her hope. They paused near the remains of a collapsed bridge. Below, the river that once gleamed in sunlight now churned with smoke and fire. Lyria shivered. "We can't cross here," she said, panic creeping back. Ethan crouched, studying the rubble carefully. "We'll find a way," he said simply. Then, with patience and skill, he began to test each broken stone, each twisted beam, until he created a narrow path across. Step by step they moved forward, Lyria's heart racing with fear. Yet trust in Ethan never wavered. As they crossed, Lyria noticed small details about him she hadn't before. The way he protected her without hesitation, the quiet intelligence in every decision, the determination in his eyes that refused to yield even when danger was all around. She felt a deep admiration, not just for his strength but for his courage and heart. Humans, she realized, were not weak. They could be fearless, clever, and selfless, and Ethan was living proof. When they reached the other side, Lyria sank to her knees, exhausted but alive. Ethan crouched beside her, offering her a ration of water. "Drink," he said softly. She took it, feeling the warmth of his care and the relief of survival flood through her. Her chest ached, not just from exhaustion, but from a profound gratitude she could barely express. He had saved her repeatedly without asking for anything in return. In him, She saw the best of humanity, something she had been taught to fear but now revered. They rested for a few moments, listening to the distant rumble of the enemy fleet retreating. Lyria's mind wandered to her mother, to the palace and to the people she had left behind. She realized that she could not have survived without Ethan. His courage, skill, and compassion had been her lifeline. And more than that, she felt something she could not name, something that had quietly grown during their journey. A bond, a trust, a sense of connection that went beyond words. Finally, Ethan stood. "We should keep moving," he said. Lyria nodded, rising with effort. They moved carefully through the outer streets, avoiding patrols and dangerous zones. Each step brought her closer to safety, closer to home, and closer to the moment when she would finally see her mother again. As they approached the palace gates, Lyria's heart raced. Smoke and ruins surrounded the once grand structure, but she could see figures moving within, guards, advisors, and finally, at the top of the stairway, Queen Arivara. Lyria's legs trembled as she ran forward, desperation and relief battling inside her. "Mother!" she cried, her voice breaking. Ethan followed, still alert, guiding her through the final stretch. And in that moment, Lyria realized the truth she had discovered along their journey. Humans were extraordinary. Not because they were the strongest or the fastest, but because they had hearts that refused to give up, courage that defied odds, and a willingness to protect others at any cost. Ethan was the embodiment of all of it, and thanks to him she was alive. Lyria glanced at him as they reached the gates. Their eyes met briefly, and in that look, she silently thanked him. He had saved her life, he had restored her hope, and he had changed her understanding of what it meant to be truly brave. The palace gates loomed ahead, scarred from battle but still standing. Lyria's heart pounded as she ran toward them, dragging each step through exhaustion and relief. Behind her, Ethan moved carefully, scanning for threats, making sure she stayed safe. For days he had been her protector, her guide, and now finally she was about to see her mother again. The thought filled her with both joy and fear. What if her mother had been lost? What if the palace had fallen completely? But then at the top of the grand stairway she saw her, Queen Arivara. Her eyes widened, a mix of disbelief and terror as she realized her daughter had returned. Lyria called out, voice trembling, "Mother! I'm home!" Tears streaked down her cheeks as she ran faster, throwing herself into her mother's arms. Queen Arivara's knees buckled as she caught her daughter, holding her tightly as though she would never let go. Lyria felt the safety and love she had longed for during the horrors of the past days, and then she added, breathless but full of relief, "He saved me, Mother." "He saved me." She gestured toward Ethan, who had followed quietly, watching the reunion with calm composure. Queen Arivara looked at him, confusion and astonishment in her eyes. She had feared humans, distrusted them, and believed them weak. And yet here he was, the reason her daughter was alive. "Who?" the queen whispered, voice trembling, unable to finish the thought. Ethan stepped forward slowly, bowing his head respectfully. He did not speak at first, allowing the queen to take in the reality of what had happened. Every guard and advisor nearby stared, unsure how to react. A human, yes, but a hero. The notion seemed impossible. Lyria's voice rang out, insistent and proud. "Mother, he fought for me." He never hesitated, never faltered. "If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here." Queen Arivara's hands shook as she reached out toward Ethan, finally seeing the truth in Lyria's eyes. There was no exaggeration, no deception, only gratitude and awe. Tears streamed freely down the queen's face. She wept openly, feeling a mix of relief, gratitude, and humility. I cannot believe it," she whispered, voice thick. "A human. Save my daughter. My child, my life." Her arms wrapped around Lyria once more, then she turned to Ethan. You are welcome here," she said, voice firm but emotional. "You have our gratitude. You have our respect." Ethan simply nodded, quiet and unassuming. He had not fought for recognition or reward. He had fought because it was the right thing to do. Yet in that moment, the significance of his actions became clear to everyone present. Humans were no longer outsiders to be underestimated. They were capable of courage, strength, and honor that could change the fate of worlds. The guards and advisors exchanged glances, murmurs of surprise spreading through the court. Some had doubted humans for generations, yet this one had proved them all wrong. Lyria felt a sense of pride and admiration swell within her. She had learned something profound. Bravery and heroism were not defined by species, by size, or by appearance. They were defined by heart. Ethan stepped closer to Lyria, offering her a steadying hand. She took it without hesitation, feeling the connection that had grown between them during the perilous journey. For the first time, she realized that her gratitude was not only for her life, but for the man who had shown her what humans were truly capable of. Queen Arivara wiped her tears, looking at the two of them. Your courage, your heart, has saved more than a life today. You have shown us all a truth we should never forget. Lyria smiled through her tears, knowing that the journey had changed her, her mother, and perhaps her entire people forever. And as the sun rose higher in the sky, painting the palace in soft gold light, Lyria felt something she had not felt since the attack began. Peace. The terror of the past days had faded, replaced with hope, gratitude, and the quiet knowledge that sometimes heroes came in the most unexpected forms. The palace courtyard was quiet now, the echoes of battle fading into the past. Lyria stood beside her mother, Queen Arivara, looking out over the city that had been scarred but not defeated. The streets still smoked and some buildings were shattered, yet there was a sense of hope lingering in the air. Lyria's heart was full, not with fear but with pride and gratitude. She had survived and she had learned something she would never forget. Courage, loyalty, and heart could transcend anything, even the limits of species. Ethan stood beside her, quiet and steady, his eyes scanning the perimeter. Though he was battered and weary, there was an unshakable calm about him. Lyria glanced at him, and in that simple moment she felt an overwhelming admiration. He had risked everything to save her life, and now in the aftermath, she could finally see the depth of what he had done. Not for glory, not for reward, just because it was right. Queen Arivara stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tears still glistening on her cheeks. You have done the impossible, she said, turning toward Ethan. You have saved my daughter, my people, and reminded us of what courage truly means. You are not merely a human. You are a hero. The words were soft, yet carried a weight that made the guards and advisors around them stand in stunned silence. Ethan shook his head, humble. I only did what I had to, he said quietly. She needed someone to protect her. That's all. But Lyria knew the truth. What he had done required more than skill, it required heart. Humans, she realized fully now, were capable of things no one had believed. They could be heroes, defenders, and warriors in ways that could change the course of history. The crowd of guards, advisors, and palace staff slowly approached, their faces reflecting a mix of awe and newfound respect. Whispers spread. Humans were not weak. Humans were capable. And one human, one single man, had proven it beyond doubt. Lyria felt a swell of pride, not just in Ethan, but in humanity itself. She had seen their strength firsthand, their courage and their resolve. She knew now that humans deserved a place of honor among the stars. Lyria stepped forward, taking Ethan's hand in hers. Thank you, she said, voice trembling yet steady. You saved me and you showed us all what humans can be. I will never forget it. Ethan gave a small, humble smile, but it reached his eyes, filled with quiet pride and warmth. He did not need words. Lyria knew his courage spoke louder than any sentence. Queen Arivara placed a gentle hand on her daughter's shoulder, then looked at Ethan again. You have changed everything today, she said softly. Our people will remember your courage, and your name will be honored. You have bridged worlds, human and alien alike, through nothing but your heart and bravery. For a long moment, the three of them stood in silence, the weight of the events settling around them. The city had been tested, lives had been lost, and the enemy had been driven back, but hope remained. And in that hope, a lesson had been etched forever. Strength was not measured in size or species, but in heart, in will, and in courage that refused to fail. Lyria looked at Ethan, and she knew that her world had changed forever. Humans were no longer outsiders or strangers. They were allies, protectors, and heroes. And this one human had shown her in every action and every breath that heroism could come in forms no one had expected. The sun rose higher, casting golden light across the palace and the city beyond. Lyria turned to her mother and Ethan, smiling through tears. We survived, she whispered, voice full of emotion. And we will rebuild together. Queen Arivara nodded, eyes shining with pride and hope. Ethan, quiet but strong, simply stood beside them, a living symbol of courage and humanity's potential. And in that moment, Lyria knew the truth of it all. Sometimes heroes came from the most unlikely places. Sometimes one human could change the fate of an entire world. And Zithra would never forget the day a human saved their princess and reminded them all of the power of courage, heart, and hope.